Next item on the agenda is a duck stamp request, and I know it won't be Dave Pulliam, so I don't know who's going to do it.
Elmer.
Dave assigned that to the Clark.
Does everybody know that Dave retired?
No.
Yeah, Dave Pulliam retired from NDOW. Can't recall how many years he had in with us, but
A little over 10.
a little over 10. He's now the deputy director with the Washington Department of Fish and Game. And he's taking up residency, and he's going to be in Washington, be working out of the Olympia state office.
Deputy Director for Wildlife.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Elmer.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Lent and other board members. My name's Elmer Bull. I'm a wildlife staff specialist with NDOW. As noted, I'm filling in for Dave Pulliam. I'll be doing the presentations of the duck stamp proposals and also the upland bird stamp proposals. With regard to the duck stamp project, NDOW is requesting approval for funding 23 projects totaling $141,036. Just to establish some context here as far as the amount of money that's available for these projects, there's currently a reserve balance of about $527,791 in duck stamp reserve, and duck stamp sales for 2010 totaled $88,460, which is pretty consistent with duck stamp sales over the last quite a few years. So I'd be happy to answer questions or address comments about the projects that are being proposed.
Why don't you go through and give us a short explanation of, would you do that?
Okay, for each one?
Yeah.
Okay, starting at the top, North American Wetlands Conservation Act. This is a fund that we contribute to. The money is actually paid to Ducks Unlimited, who in turn spends that money doing work in the Canadian provinces, and it's all intended to contribute and meet the requirements of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, and it's an annual contribution to that project for those Canadian wetlands. The second one is the Nevada Hunters Journal. The Nevada Hunters Journal was started about 3 years ago, and it's intended to be a tool that hunters can use to accurately record their hunting activity in the field. And it was implemented by Craig Mortimer in our game division, and the intent was so that when hunters receive the postseason hunter questionnaire for small game, that they would have and be able to provide accurate information to the department. The questionnaire does not go out to all small game hunters. It's done, I believe, about 10% of the licensed hunters receive that questionnaire. And because it's not going out to all hunters, the need for accurate information is very real. So the concept here was to provide them with a small journal that they could take with them in the field, and that they could record all of their hunting activity, where they hunted, the type of success that they enjoyed, the number of birds they harvested, and so forth. That way, if they were one of the select people that got a postseason hunter questionnaire card, they would be able to provide accurate information. That accurate information could be used by our folks to develop management strategies relative to bag limits, focusing funding on projects in certain areas, and so on and so forth. So it was intended to provide accurate information to us, and which would allow us to make better decisions on management of small game species.
Did you get any private funds for this year?
$1,000.
I don't think,
5,000.
No, it was,
I don't see that.
we were seeking $3,500 in duck stamp money, $3,500 in upland game stamp, and $1,500 would come from wildlife restoration grant.
You didn't get any private funds
No,
like you did before.
yeah,
Okay.
it has been before. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pintail banding, this is a project that was started, I think a year and a half ago, at the Carson Lake and Pasture area. This project is intended to provide a better and more accurate information relative to pintail activity in the state of Nevada. Again, this was started by Craig Mortimer in the game division, and he initiated this project because of concern about the model that was being used by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to establish seasons and bag limits on certain species. And Craig was concerned that the model that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was using was not particularly pertinent to waterfowl populations in this part of the Pacific Flyway. This banding project was intended to identify and track the populations within this specific area of the Pacific Flyway, and hopefully through the banding project be able to provide valuable information to the Fish and Wildlife Service, and maybe have an adjustment in the way bag limits and seasons are set for specific species in this portion of the flyway. Wood duck project is occurring in the Lahontan Valley area. It's intended to monitor the activities of wood ducks in that part of our flyway. It's an ongoing project. It's been going for, I think, 7 or 8 years, and it's proven to be, it's provided some very, very interesting information, assessments of wood duck distribution, migration patterns, productivity and brood survival, and overall population status in the Lahontan Valley. The project has been examined by other states and could form the foundation for similar studies in those states. And these analytical approaches could be used toward assessing population status of other waterfowl species. The other benefit of this project has been it's caused us to establish a stronger relationship with UNR and the public. And so that's what that project's about. Carson Lake noxious weed control. The Carson Lake area, like many of our wildlife areas, has been invaded by a number of species of noxious weeds. There's a need to continue treatment to try to get control of those noxious weeds. If we do not do those kinds of treatments, we're going to suffer the consequences of having those types of plants invade some of the real desirable habitat on the property. Carson Lake cattail control. Cattails are a integral part of almost any marsh ecosystem. However, at times, cattails become overabundant and start to detract from the quality of the wildlife habitat. And also, in the case of Carson Lake, an overabundance of cattails will result in diminishment of access for hunters and so forth. This project involves aerial application of herbicides to cattails. Although I don't think we're going to do aerial application this year. This is intended for mostly ground application and the maintenance of boat channels for hunter access at Carson Lake. Carson Lake wetland brochure, as well as another one down below, Steptoe Wetlands brochure, are intended to provide quality information to the public about the wetland resources that are available on those properties, and provide them with information about the opportunities for using those areas, including the opportunity to hunt waterfowl on those properties. Mason Valley cattail control, similar to the other project at Carson Lake. There's a need to, on just about an annual basis, do cattail control to maintain the appropriate balance of cover versus open water in our wetlands. And That's what that project is intended to do. Mason Valley pond leveling. We are currently involved in a number of pond leveling projects, as you'll see further down in the list. In the case of many of our wildlife management areas, the ponds that are on those properties are often man-made, and in many cases they were done, those ponds were built without a lot of engineering criteria designed into them, and consequently we have ended up with ponds that are okay, but these leveling projects are an attempt to try to improve the quality of those ponds. In many cases, what we intend to do here is to level these ponds out, thereby creating better wetland habitat, more shallow feeding habitat for waterfowl, and in addition, being able to do that with less water. And in today's world, it appears that we are going to need to do our very best to try to continue to maintain wetlands with less water. And that's what this project is, as well as some others as we move on down.
What is Nevada Ducks Unlimited?
Nevada Ducks Unlimited is a committee. There's a committee that, and I'm on that committee, that was established to, what happens to go back, there's a number of years ago, a state Ducks Unlimited license plate was established, and there was a certain amount of funds generated from that. In addition, when the various chapters of Ducks Unlimited have fundraising events in Nevada, and the proceeds are forwarded back to the national organization, that the national organization will give back to the state a certain percentage of the amount of money sent in. So this committee was established to decide what is going to happen with those funds, and that's what Nevada Ducks Unlimited is. Okay. So in this situation with Mason Valley pond leveling, as well as the Overton pond leveling down below, I requested funding from this committee to be used on the pond leveling project at Mason Valley as well as Overton.
Do you have a bid on it yet with the cost?
No, we do not have a bid. That's something we need to work on.
Thank you.
Okay. Mason Valley noxious weed control, again, all of our wildlife management areas are besought with various noxious weeds, or in some cases it's not necessarily noxious weeds but unwanted vegetation, but in this case this project would target primarily tall whitetop at the Mason Valley Wildlife Area, which is really working hard to try to take over the entire property, and it's going to be an ongoing project for a long time. Very persistent noxious weed, and one of those deals that we just need to stay on top of every year, and there's going to be a need to provide this type of treatment every year. Mason Valley Wildlife Redhead Pumping Station. A number of years ago, the department entered into an agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation to receive a grant to perform water conservation measures at the Mason Valley Wildlife Area. The intent of the water conservation measures was to try to diminish the amount of water that our area uses from the Walker River, thereby freeing up some water for delivery to Walker Lake. I think most everybody in this area understands the dire condition of Walker Lake at this time, and the need to try to get more water to Walker Lake. So we entered into an agreement to perform various water conservation measures. One of those is the Redhead Pumping Station, and what this station does is allows us to make more efficient use of some alternative water sources on the area. It allows us to transfer water from one area to another area of the management area, and in doing that, and in combination and concert with the pond leveling projects, we're able to be a lot more efficient with the use of water on our property. The Joggles well pumping is, we have at the Mason Valley Wildlife Area a well in the wetland area. We have for the last few years asked for funding to pump that well. If water supplies are adequate in the fall from other sources, that is the Walker River or discharge water from the Mason Valley Fish Hatchery, that money would not necessarily be used. However, if we get into a situation in the fall where water supplies are low, that would give us the opportunity to pump 330 acre-feet of water into the wetland at Mason Valley. Key Pittman noxious weed control. There again, the species down there I think are mostly thistles and maybe a little bit of tamarisk. I can't remember for sure in there, but it does have a noxious weed component that's trying to invade the property. Again, this will be a project that we'll probably be working on every year. It's not a huge amount of money, but that's what we need to have for herbicides to try to go ahead and maintain the habitat in the wetland and fight off those noxious weeds. Key Pittman pond enhancement. This is, we've identified a need to do some work on a couple of the ponds down at Key Pittman. It's actually going to require that we get some engineering assistance to identify the best means to go ahead and modify those ponds. And the $2,500 is of duck stamp money would be matched up with sport fish restoration grant money to hire an engineer to take a look and come up with some design criteria for doing the pond enhancement there. Eastern Region WMA weed control. That includes doing noxious weed control on the Bruno Wildlife Management Area as well as Franklin Lake area on the eastern side of the state. Kirch Wildlife Management Area prescribed burning. This is another project that we request funding for on nearly an annual basis. In conjunction with other vegetation control efforts down there, primarily through herbicidal application, we have the need to periodically burn off areas of that management area to reduce an overabundance of decadent vegetation that's accumulated over the years. In many cases, those burns can be very large, and we need assistance to try to make sure those burns don't get out of control. And so we typically enlist the services of the Nevada Division of Forestry to help us out with doing those prescribed burns on that area, and that's what that funding's for. Kirch Wildlife Area, same story as the others. Noxious weeds in various locations. In this place, it's primarily Russian knapweed. Many years ago, we had a horrific problem with Russian knapweed at Kirch. Over the years, we've been fairly successful in getting on top of that situation. However, there still are patches of it that pop up here and there, and there's a need to continue treating those. Kirch pond leveling. There's an area on the Kirch Wildlife Area called Old Place. I was just down there this last week and looked at where this leveling project would occur. Again, this is an attempt to create better shallow, more moist soil habitat. Habitats that's more ideal for feeding conditions for waterfowl. Again, this money would be matched up with federal aid grant money to accomplish that project. Kirch cattail and tule control. This is a fairly sizable amount of money that's intended to do aerial application of herbicides to about 500 acres of cattails and tules. This is an effort to maintain an appropriate balance of open water to vegetative cover. What we try to shoot for is about 70% of the area being open water and 30% being vegetative cover. Occasionally, this balance gets out of whack, and we have a need to go in and try to eliminate some of that vegetative cover and restore more open water habitat.
How long will that last?
How long will it last? It kind of depends on water management. After that, we have to work very hard to maintain appropriate water levels. My guess is about every 5 years there will be a need down there to do a project like this.
Okay.
Locks Ranch noxious weed control. Again, Locks Ranch is a property in Railroad Valley that was acquired by the department a few years back. Like almost all of our properties, there are some noxious weed, primarily tamarisk on this property, a little bit of, I believe, spotted knapweed, and I think some tall whitetop also. So this is an attempt to stay on top of that situation. Steptoe Valley noxious weeds. Steptoe Valley's a wildlife management area right down the road from town here. Like the others, noxious weeds on the property, primarily hoary cress, and a need to stay on top of that. I think I already talked about the wetlands brochure, an attempt to provide good information to the public about our wetland resources and garner support from the public for maintenance and the protection of our wetlands. Overton pond leveling, this would involve doing some work at the at Pintail Pond and Wilson Pond on the lower end of the Overton Wildlife Management Area with the same goals as the others. Try to improve the quality of habitat that we are providing in those ponds, and doing so by going in and laser leveling those ponds. We'll no longer manage those as year-round wetlands. Those would be managed as moist soil units, irrigated periodically and then flooded up in the fall to provide migrating habitat or habitat for migrating birds and also hunting opportunity for hunters. That totals $141,036.
Commissioner Howell?
Hey, Elmer, what happened to our goats over there at Kirch? Are they coming back, or?
Well, the goats, we had an operator that owned a bunch of goats right next door to the management area, and it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
And they were being used in there in conjunction with some cattle grazing that we are also doing there. But her name was Judy Baker. She informed us this last year that she wasn't going to have goats to graze on the property. So I'm not sure, I don't know whether she found a better use for the goats. She was actually paying the department to graze her goats on our property.
Yeah.
In today's world, actually, there's a lot of goat operators that are making a lot of money by moving their goats around and doing vegetation control in other areas, and they're being paid handsomely for their goats. So I'm not sure what the situation was with Judy down there, but she made us aware that she wasn't going to have goats to graze on the property.
I got one more question.
Sure.
When you level Old Place over there, it'll just be for the ducks, right? I mean, the water's only going to be so deep,
Correct.
there'll be no fish in there.
No, there will be no fishery maintained in there.
Yeah.
It'll be managed as a moist soil unit where we get this thing leveled out, periodically flood it. We may plant some wetland vegetation in there. We may also benefit from the natural occurrence of some species of wetland vegetation in there. We'll just have to see what responds after we do the leveling work. But yeah, there will be no fishery in there.
Thanks.
Sure.
Commissioner Capuro?
Yes, sir. Was there a beginning balance with respect to the funds in the
Yes.
duck stamp program?
Sure. We have, currently we have, based on the information I got from our financial services section last week, a balance of approximately $527,000 in duck stamp funding. One of the reasons there is such a large balance there is we, over the years, have been storing up some money in there in anticipation of doing a large wetland enhancement project at Toulon Lake at the Humboldt Wildlife Management Area. And in fact, last year, this board approved somewhere over $300,000 to try to accomplish that project. That project was going to occur on some land that's owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. And working with the Bureau of Reclamation and trying to get their approval to do this work on their property, they laid out a requirement that we have cultural resource inventory done on that property, and the dollar value for accomplishing those cultural resource surveys was a minimum of about $180,000, and it could go considerably higher depending on what may have shown up during the survey. We had to take a look at that situation and determine whether that's really a beneficial use of the money at that point, because that would only include the cultural resource surveys and reports that are required. That wouldn't even include any of the construction work out there. So at this time, we've kind of backed away from that project, and we want to take a look at it some more and see whether that's really cost effective to do, and we were going to receive the benefit that we thought we were going to there. So that's why that fund is large.
These, look like all good projects to me. I want to compliment you for being so well prepared.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, and I'm gonna turn it over to the public here if they got any questions, so just hang loose there. Let's turn it over for public
So we
comment
had,
on,
we had a few. One was Gil Yannick, followed by Paul Dixon.
Gil Yannick, Carson Cab. A couple of questions came up when we discussed this at our meeting, some of which Elmer's already answered, because we questioned, was there, number one, how much money was in the fund? We know how much money is going to be left in the fund. That 527 is after these expenditures or prior to?
That's after last year's expenditures.
Oh, so-
There might be still some bills coming in on that, but it's not gonna change.
So this number will be, if all these projects are approved, it'll go down by another 141,000. Okay. The next question we had was, were there projects that were submitted, since we didn't know how much money was in there, we didn't know if there was more projects submitted that did not get approved because of lack of funding ability? No. So everything that was submitted?
includes everything that was
Okay.
submitted, yes.
Then when Elmer's excellent explanation of what each one of these projects included, a lot of them start to sound like operating expenses rather than projects. When you're paying for electricity to run a pump, I mean, I know the fact that when you look at the budget, the amount that we get from the general fund is small amount. And without taking money and using that money for matching funds in a lot of these projects, we wouldn't really be able to do any of these projects. So, you know, like it or not, it appears that the department and the accomplishment of all these projects totally depends on people going hunting, buying duck stamps, buying upland stamps, because that's the only way we can afford to continue to do some very worthy projects. And I commend Elmer and the group and the department for being able to accomplish what they have with the funds that have been available. Thank you.
hey, Gil, and I agree, and I think I would be opposed to taking the money out of this and putting it into another fund, like in the wildlife account.
Oh, no, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think.
We wanna leave it where
It's
at.
well, this is where it belongs. This is what the sportsmen, the duck hunters appreciate and understand where their money's going. And when they see this kind of explanation, it's got to make them feel good that when they buy those duck stamps, this is what they get for it.
Right, thank you. Who else?
I think we had Paul Dixon was the only, followed by Rick Smith.
Yeah, Rich.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. I wanted to say, maybe have Elmer come up and just speak to, is one of the questions that was asked is as you look at these projects that are around the state, and the question was asked, well, if you look at Southern Nevada, there's just one project this year, is that being equitable in the system? And Elmer actually gave a very good explanation, as well as Dave, about how if you look at long-term and balancing how we've done things, it appears to be very balanced. And I just wondered if you'd comment on that just for the general public here, because I thought that was a very good point. Thank you.
Sure. One of the reasons that there's only one project listed for the Overton Wildlife Area this year was that up until a couple of years ago, we relied considerably on duck stamp funding to accomplish some of the farming activity at the Overton Wildlife Management Area. We made the decision a couple of years ago, because of the shortage of manpower at Overton and the fact that we moved one person away from that position, that we would enter into a sharecrop agreement with a local farmer there to provide farming on the property. The farming was intended to provide quality waterfowl habitat in the fields on the area. Consequently, we did not have the need to come in and request duck stamp funding to provide seed and fertilizer and stuff for that farming operation. So that request went away. The one that is on the table right now, we feel is a very viable project. We think that we're going to see good benefits out of leveling Wilson and Pintail ponds on that area. I believe that, in subsequent years, we'll probably identify some other projects that would benefit from duck stamp funding. But for this year, we wanted to focus our efforts on that leveling project there. As far as, I know at the meeting 10 days ago down in Las Vegas, we heard these comments, and really, there was a feeling amongst some of the members in the group that Overton was being overlooked as far as funding and so forth. That's not the case. I don't have numbers with me right now, but I have over the years put together numbers showing the amount of money that we have budgeted for the various wildlife management areas, and Overton has done quite well. So I feel comfortable with how funds are being appropriated for use at Overton.
And you're receptive to any suggestions from the Clark County Advisory Board, if they've got any suggestions on how to improve Overton or projects they'd like to see, you're receptive to those too.
Absolutely, and that was one of the reasons for this item being on the agenda at the Clark County Advisory Board a week ago. We have, excuse me.
I was just gonna, if I might, just to follow up that, at the meeting, what we told the folks that were raising some of the questions is that to work with the people at the facility, in and out, and if they feel there are projects that that should be done, that they actually work with the department and bring forth those kind of projects. But to work with the department, because this is all part of a fund that deals with all of the wildlife management areas, and so we just said that that encourage them to become a part of the process.
One of the things that we've been doing, and this is the 4th year now of it, because Overton is at the southern end of the state, and because there might not be as much interaction with sportsmen from that area as we have in some of the northern wildlife management areas. Dave Pulliam and I started a few years back going down and meeting with sportsmen down at Overton once a year, and the meetings were started because of some widespread discontent about the way the area was being managed, and the first meeting was a little rough and pretty contentious, but we got a lot of things out on the table. That was when the decision was made to do the sharecrop farming program there, and the results of that have been good. All of the meetings since then have been good. We still continue to solicit input from the hunters, and this year we did it through the County Advisory Board meeting. So we're staying in touch with those folks, and yeah, we're very receptive to ideas. Our Habitat Division, in addition to Dave's retirement, has been riddled by other vacancies, including the manager now at the Overton Wildlife Management Area, so we'll be looking to fill that position. And oftentimes with new manager in the spot comes some new and fresh ideas also, so we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. Who else you have on?
That was everybody.
Rick.
Oh, after Rick, yeah.
Rick Smith, Washoe Cap. One question, or not a question, one comment, Elmer, that we'd like to request, and you answered it at the very beginning as far as the funds. If you could, when you do these proposals, make sure everybody knows what is available, because like with heritage projects, there's more projects than there is money. And, that was a question I'll bet every board came up with. And so we went on the assumption there was more money than there was funds. But that would help when these come up to the cabs. All these projects are really good projects. The only issues we had at our meeting was our member Wilson, who is a lawyer, brought up the statute, or not statute, it says duck stamp funds mandate that the funds be used exclusively for the protection and propagation of migratory birds and preservation of wetlands. The 3 projects that don't meet that are the Nevada Hunters Journal, the Carson Lake Wetlands Brochure, and the Steptoe Wetlands Brochure. Those do not meet what the mandates of those funds be used for. So we voted not to support those 3 and support the rest, even though they're really good projects, and at heart we really do support them. A suggestion is you might look at what those funds, what the mandate of those funds are, and maybe add education at the beginning of that, so that that doesn't become an issue. But as it's written right now, education is not part of what those funds are allowed to be used for, so.
Thank you. Elmer, I think last year we had the same problem in the county boards. They didn't have a beginning balance, and I thought that as a commission, I remember saying to Dave Pulliam, we want the beginning balances so everybody would know how much money we have to work for, and he assured us that it would be in these, so just, it got slipped through the cracks, I think, but just, they need to know what the beginning balance is on these projects on, so that'd be important to have that information, and
Very good.
I'm sure we'll have it.
Easy to provide, yes.
Thank you. One more. Commissioner Capurro first.
Yeah, thank you. You gave us the current balance, which I do appreciate and agree with all the comments so that everybody knows what there is to work with. And the question came up about did that balance include expenditures that were in this report, and your answer was no. That comes out of this, but what you didn't say was ongoing funds that come into this from the duck stamp program. So how much money is that we're dealing with?
Okay. The figure that I gave you, 527,791, represents the balance right now, or it's an approximate balance. There might still be some bills coming in from fiscal 10 projects from last year, but it's not going to change substantially. In 2010, as far as revenue coming into this fund, we had duck stamp sales of $88,460. And as I mentioned, that's pretty consistent with duck stamp sales over the last 5 years or so. I think that's pretty much what we can count on as far as annual revenue coming in.
Commissioner Howell.
Who's taking over there at Kirch? Dana's gone, huh?
Yeah, Dana Johnson retired from NDOW, and we don't know that yet. We just completed the justification to fill that position, and I believe we should be seeing that position posted fairly soon. So at that point, it'll be open to applications from interested parties, and we'll go through the selection process.
That other young fellow's still there, I suppose, huh?
Yes, Marcus Jones is still there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So basically 2 questions. One was about the value of volunteer time. I noticed in project, the wood duck study, it was valued here at $38.83. Is there a standard amount per hour? Because in other projects, like heritage stuff, it's valued a different amount of money per hour. Is there a standard that is used or should be used, or?
Yes, there is.
And that standard?
We negotiate that with federal aid. It's been rather contentious here recently, but we have a rate where a person's performing the same duty as a biologist. That's one rate. Then we have a technical level where people are doing less detailed work, and there's another big rate for that.
Is that published somewhere? Because I know when things like heritage would not come up, the applicants probably, or potential applicants probably don't know what to put on that form, and they're coming up with
Sure.
$10 an hour or 20, or if that was published somewhere, that might be.
So you can make that available.
So that question's come up before. My answers have been ask somebody else. The other question on this was a couple of these projects I see you've been talked about the use of goats, and you've talked about the use of cattle as in several of these. Has those types of holistic weed removal, cattail removal been considered for all the different weed removal areas? Has that been a consideration?
Yes, it has. We have integrated cattle grazing into Mason Valley, Step four of the wildlife management areas, yeah. And we've enjoyed good success with them. However, there are still areas where noxious weeds occur or other vegetation occurs that we can't get at, and this is, herbicide application is basically our only option.
But basically, that is being, those types of holistic weed and cattail removal is being done everywhere it can be done, or is there places where it could be utilized?
We continue to look for opportunity to cordon off areas that we can graze, yeah.
Within some of these programs?
Sure, yeah, we do, you do. Sometimes it's just not practical to fence off, you know, certain areas. And we definitely don't like putting in permanent fences to control grazing. A lot of times it's done with electric fences, but in some areas it's just not practical to try to do.
I just know, seen in some of these, talking to a couple people that are doing a couple of these projects, saying that there's a lot of other benefits to them being in there. You know, not only removing the vegetation, but also the fertilization effects that they have, and such. And they don't leave standing dead brush where the chemicals do.
No, it's been a bonanza for us. It really has. In this situation, controlled, managed grazing works very well for us.
Okay, thank you. That was all.
I just had a question, and I don't know, on the Mason Valley pond leveling, you had a total of 161,000 on that, and that was also submitted as a heritage project, and there's only 136,000 balance on that. And they're, you know, just...
I think when we submitted for the heritage project and it wasn't approved, we did a little bit of modification. I think we added a couple of more ponds when we decided that we would go back and try to fund that project using wildlife restoration money. It was changed a little bit from the heritage proposal.
Yeah, I figured it was modified.
Yeah.
Commissioner Capurro?
I guess I don't have any particular concern about, and I did enjoy the explanation. I think it was very good about the projects that are being done and the money associated with it. I guess what does make me nervous is to have a current balance, starting balance of $527,000. I'm not in favor of spending everything we have, but it seems to me like perhaps that's a fairly excessive amount to keep on hand, if you will, on the project levels that you're approving are $141,000. I don't have any suggestions other than maybe there's some other projects that could be
Commissioner McBeth?
If I
Go ahead.
could, I would just reiterate that balance would have been significantly less had we decided to move forward with the project out at Humboldt.
I understand that.
We're currently trying to evaluate to determine whether we ought to try to move forward with that again down the road.
You might need it then.
Might need it.
Okay, Commissioner McBeth?
I just want to follow up that comment with the fact that if, you have situations that come up, and the one that comes to my mind is the one at Overton with the 2000, I think it was the 2005 flood that came down through the Meadow Valley Wash and basically ended up going right through the project. And there was a tremendous amount of damage, so there could be reasons that we could, have events occur on some of these projects that may require, some large expenditures. And so I think we ought to keep that in mind. Just that particular event in particular, is one that I remember, and it's taken a number of years to get those, to get that project back. In fact, I think there's areas that still haven't come back.
There are still areas at Overton, particularly at the very north end, that were damaged so severely, primarily by the deposition of really, really nasty soil on top of some of what's called the Ducks Unlimited fields there. In this case, 13 acres of a couple of feet of soil on top of it. Really bad stuff, yeah. So but you're absolutely right. There can be situations that occur that way that would require the need for a considerable amount of money. And it's probably wise to try to carry a certain balance. I can understand this balance here being an eye catcher.
Commissioner Kevin?
I had a question. Maybe it may end up with the DAGs, but on page 1, the first project talks about the money being given to going to Canadian wetlands, and it looks to me like the NRS is pretty narrow that it has to be spent in Nevada. So I would just defer that to the DAGs.
Okay, do you want me to answer that now?
Okay, let's turn this over to our attorney here on the concerns produced by Warshow and this one here, so I'm gonna turn it over to Brian.
Okay, so here, I looked at the statute that Mr. Smith mentioned, and it says money received, blah, 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 must be used for projects for protection and propagation of migratory game birds. And, you know, protection is a pretty broad term, so I think if you're educating the public about the, you know, the ducks or whatever's in the brochure, I haven't seen the brochure, but that's one of the protection things. And then as to Commissioner Cavan's comment that it has to be used for the protection in Nevada, you know, that's going to be a factual question, but the problem is if you don't have the breeding grounds in Canada, you're not going to have any ducks in Nevada. So that does have an effect on the propagation of wildlife in Nevada.
Well, I'm not against the project, I'm just asking the question.
To keep us honest.
And I might comment while they're still negotiating here. The $10,000 is our contribution to a really big NACA project, and there's a lot of different states that are benefited from that NACA project in Canada that sends ducks our way. So it's kind of like every state's adding money to as our match to the federal dollars that go.
No, I don't have any problem, I'm just asking a question.
Editorializing.
And Commissioner Macbeth and I were just talking, there's, you know, we got our statutory construction with lawyers, you gotta look at every word and
Every comma.
you can see it says protection and propagation of migratory game birds, comma, then it has the conjunction and then it has for the acquisition, development, and preservation of wetlands, then there's no comma, in Nevada. So does in Nevada only modify wetlands, and therefore the protection and propagation of migratory game birds would be independent of that in Nevada phrase, and therefore be okay.
Just give us a bottom line.
I could make that argument with a straight face in front of a judge, I guarantee you.
We could too.
And the other attorney would be on the other.
Yeah, we crown.
What's the bottom line?
We're okay. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
The bottom line says we're okay.
I'm good, I'm happy.
Okay. So that's our legal opinion, so.
We're good to go.
Yeah, let's close the public comment, bring it back to the commission. We've had enough questions. What's the pleasure? Commissioner Howell.
I move that we approve in its total duck stamp request. There's no number for it.
As presented today.
Project BA 4458.
$141,036.
It's for fiscal.
Oh, the proposal submitted for duck stamp funding fiscal year 11. $141,036.
Second.
Let's approve it all.
Who seconded it? We have a motion by Commissioner Howell to approve the fiscal year 2011 duck stamp program as presented in the amount of $141,036, seconded by Commissioner Cavan. Everybody understand the motion? If so, I'll call for the vote. All for the motion, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Thank you. Very good presentation. Let's go to the next item on the agenda.